Flintlock fantasy with kick. A secret map to a hidden treasure of immense power. An empire engaged in a war upon multiple continents, and a dark commander who wields mysterious power. A fearless young woman who must get the map to one person who can protect it and use the cache of great power to turn the tide of war. A young man with plans to embark upon a new career with the girl he loves at his side has his hopes dashed as events sweep him into the center of the conflict, forcing him to thread the rude eye of revolution. In order to survive, he must escape the clutches of the Dark Commander and master the same power his enemy wields. Time is a luxury the Dark Commander does not intend to grant the young man. A strange pair may help save the map, but they cannot keep the young woman from the grasp of the Dark Commander. The dragon hunters seek their prey with a commission from the king, but even they don't know the true purpose of their task. How can they overcome the awesome power of a beast rumored to be impervious to weapons, and which spews fires of the devil's own forge? The smugglers may agree to add some desperate passengers to their cargo, but they can't foresee that an accounting will be required in blood. All of the players upon this stage where the mighty empires collide will soon face a terrible trial by fire. Threading the Rude Eye by Stanley Wheeler is a Flintlock fantasy. It is a genre which I am not hugely familiar with just because it hasn't really crossed my path, but when I do read it, I like it quite a lot. A sort of historical urban fantasy where the magic takes place in our world, but at points in history, usually associated with 18th century, early 19th century sort of things, wherein we have several characters. In this particular book, we follow several characters who are sort of tangentially involved with the American Revolution. We have Alex, who is a lawyer-to-be on an island, and so he has sort of very firm opinions about what's right and wrong and the law and that sort of a thing. And then we have the commander as his sort of nemesis type thing, and the commander is a high-ranking officer with the king's army who has a power given to him by these mysterious objects called dragon stones, which are imbued with magic and allow the wielder to do things that would involve extraordinary strength or healing ability or command or persuasion and whatnot, and this is a problem. So they, plus several other characters who get involved, try to find, the commander is trying to find the map, which Alex ends up being near at various points, and so his life is altered by this, and there's, you know, goose chase and problems, and we get to see things like a few of the beginning battles in the American Revolution, and it's quite fascinating. So I shan't give you a huge amount because spoilers are a thing, but I can say that the plot is very interesting. I like the weaving in of magic in this book because it deals a lot more with the idea of history as opposed to just these events happen to take place in a historical time, but it's not really, you know, important, as sometimes happens with things. I like the fact that a lot of the history was sort of involved and important and woven together, and you meet interesting figures from the time, and there's definitely lifestyle and research and whatnot done, and I think that was done very well. I liked it quite a lot. As far as the characters go, I like Alex. I think he is probably one of the more rigidly moralistic characters I have read in a while, which is fascinating because they're always thrown into rather unfortunate circumstances and problems ensue, and I always like to see how they react or don't react, as the case may be, and I think he was done very well. I liked him quite a lot. His nemesis, on the other hand, I get the motivations, I really do, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of substance behind the character accepting these particular motivations. And now, this is partly because we don't know huge amounts about the guy at this point, because, well, this is the first book in a series, and most of the book was focused on getting the situation between Alex and the commander sorted out, started up, and off on its way. And I think it works pretty well. I just wanted a little bit more substance, a little bit more interactions that don't have to do with a particular task at hand or his motivations for doing said task. I think that was fine. Yeah, the other characters are very interesting. I think they do pretty well. I don't really like Lucette, but that's just personal preference. It really has nothing to do with how she's written or her character at all. It's just, I don't find her that interesting. Well, we don't know enough about her to really understand her. However, again, this is personal opinion. It doesn't have anything to do with the way that she's written or portrayed or what. It's just, as a character, I think she's a bit not my favorite personality type. Yeah. My main critique for this book isn't really a critique per se. It's that the style of writing is a little bit I don't know how to describe this. The sentences are all of one particular form and style, and this is perfectly fine. It is actually difficult to do, but it's not usually my favorite. Again, personal preference. I think that the big problem that I had with some of these sentences is that the subject and verb order was inverted from what you would expect of standard English. Now, granted, this is a historical fiction, historical Flintlock fantasy, and the writer does a very good job in using the forms that were common of the time. And it's actually quite impressive. It took me a lot longer to analyze those sentences than usually happens for me, and I kept getting caught up on them, and it pulled me out. Now, most people aren't going to have this problem because most people are not linguists and go, oh yes, let's analyze the structure and form of sentences while reading books. It's not really a normal thing that people do. So you won't notice this unless you're a word nerd like me. But I will say that it was a bit jarring and occasionally pulled me out of the story and made me realize that I was reading a book as opposed to being immersed in one. Again, not a huge critique, mostly just the way my brain works, but it was noticeable. On the whole, though, I would say that this book was very interesting. I especially liked the history, and there was obviously a lot of effort put into the research and whatnot. I think the premise of the story was fascinating, and I liked that not too many questions were presented that didn't have answers, but there were obviously things to come in the next book in the series that would make things a lot more complicated. I like the fact that this started out as base level, and then you know that things are going to get more complex and more detailed and whatnot. It's not like this was simplistic, it definitely wasn't, but it was just starting out, and then we'll escalate things very regularly. Most of the time you see things ending in, hugely dramatic cliffhangers where, suddenly new information is presented or something of the sort. And this wasn't that, and I think it did particularly well at that, and I liked it. Yeah. So if you're interested in this book, as usual, all of the links are in the description box below. You can find them there. I shall include the interview I did with the author as well, and you can find my links there too if you're interested. Otherwise, it is quite snowy here, so I shall go enjoy the snow day and bid you to do the same, even if your weather is slightly different, because, why not? That's all I've got for you today, so I shall see you next time. Bye.